if you don't if you don't have a dedicated workspace to get your work done as a creative, it's worth looking into your public library as a place to go sit down for a couple of hours. You can sit at the library for a couple of hours and nobody is gonna look at you funny.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not
Yeah.
going to ask to refill your water. They're not going to wonder what you're doing. That's inval. Where else can you do that?
Okay, hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Ihsan.
And I'm Erick Mertz.
And this is episode 145 of the podcast. And it is January 31st, 2024, as we record this. Our main topic today is using your local library as an author resource. We want to thank our existing patrons for believing in our work offline and here at the podcast. Become a patron of the arts at patreon.com/Valerie Ihsan, IHSAN, for books, writing instruction, coaching, and planning. And go to patreon.com/Strange Air Stories for short stories in the paranormal mystery genre. Announcements. Registration is open for the 2024 Writer Craft Writing Retreat and Workshop in Marcola, Oregon. And I just figured out what the theme this year is. It's aligned
Uh-oh.
author. And there's going to be about 4 workshops at the retreat this year, and a optional scene analysis and open mic, and of course the coaching, two coaching sessions come free with the tuition, and I think there was something else too. But yeah, there's lots of ideas percolating. And while I'm in Turkey, which I'm leaving today for, I will be able to get some of those things up on the website. And yeah, I'm diving right into my author update, Eric. I'm
Got it. Got
updating
it.
my
That
website
water's warm. Get in
slowly.
there.
Getting ready for Turkey. That's basically what I've been doing for the last week. And yeah, so I'm updating my website slowly. I've got a few things I want to add to it and update. And I really wanted, there's this one, the Southwest Washington
Oh, yeah.
conference had emailed me and asked me to pitch a workshop. And the deadline is like the 15th, which is the day after we get home. And I wanted to like send in the pitch before we left so that I didn't have to worry about it. But yeah, that didn't happen. So I'll be doing that from Turkey, and then might as well like pitch some other ones too. So those are some things I'm going to be working on from Turkey. I really don't know what to expect there. In case nobody knows what I'm talking about, I'm going to Turkey today. It was kind of a last minute trip. We found out that my husband's mom is really ill, and so we're going. And yeah, hopefully that's not the last time we see her. But
Right.
so
Right.
we're going to go and be there for 2 weeks. So in terms of the show, Eric, we either are
Yes.
going to have to like take a 2 week sabbatical, or one of us or both of us will decide to spontaneously do a solo show. So
I
you
actually,
may or may not have an
Valerie,
episode.
not
What?
spontaneously. Like it is on my to-do list
It's on your to-do
to,
list. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I will,
technology, barring technology, I think,
barring technology.
yeah,
I
from
don't
my
know what I'm going to
laptop
talk
in another
about.
country.
I may talk about what it's like to co-produce something and then have to do it alone. Um, I'm
I think that's
joking.
an excellent idea.
Even though as I said it out loud in a joking manner, I thought that is actually valuable. I think we
Yeah,
all in creative in life kind of get into co projects that become solo projects. So,
right?
um, no, I'll find something. I mean, I have a plethora of
A
things to talk
plethora.
about.
All right,
Um,
awesome. So yes,
so
tune in then. And you and
yeah,
you won't know what's going to be here, so you'll have to come
it's
back.
mystery topic. We'll just
Mystery
call it
topic.
grab bag. We'll
Grab
call it grab
bag.
bag.
Nice.
Yeah.
Grab bag episodes coming up. Let's see. That was it for my announcements. And oh, one other thing for my author update. I I have a new name for my coaching program for authors, and I am going to call it Aligned Author. I haven't decided yet if I am going to do a 12-week program for like 1,500 bucks, 14.99, 14.49, something like that, or if I should just list it as $500 a month, just like ongoing, if until you don't want it anymore.
Right.
What do you think is a better like business decision, or like from a marketing standpoint?
I think we live in a subscription world.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are all like, I think when the subscription model came, as it came, this is like what a bad business person I was. I didn't see any way that I thought this is silly. People want the thing, right? Nobody wants to subscribe to Audible. They want to buy audiobooks. That's not true, folks. Um, People love to subscribe to things. And I think part of it is that freedom to snap at, like, hey, I don't want this anymore. I now get my 9.99 a month back. So I think from a business perspective, I have a hard time with that because you want to, like, the way you make money there is you get as many subscribers as you can, and then that's what you're doing. And Patreon having a lot of subscribers is one thing because you're providing the same content to 10 people as you would 100. I think the question I would then ask from a workload perspective is, if you're shooting for big numbers of people, is that going to create more work? Are you going to
No, the program is the same. It's one-on-one bespoke coaching, book coaching, publisher mentorship, like how to write a book, whatever you need it to be, author life coaching.
right?
So it's bespoke and it's one-on-one, and it meets weekly for an hour. So my workload is the same. I'm just talking like as a marketing perspective, what do you think, you know, maybe we should open that up for listeners. Like,
I think
what's
marketing it's a great
better?
idea. I
What's
think
that?
it's I think it's a great idea.
What is? Opening it up for
I think
listeners
marketing I think marketing that way is a great idea, right? From a marketing perspective, I think it's a wise move.
to do the subscription, to do like
Yeah.
the $500 a month rather than just say a 12-week program for 1,500 bucks.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Because that's the way it is now. But when I went through my accreditation program, they said, oh no, 12-week looks better than 3 months. Like they had some like psychology behind it or something, but I don't know.
I think that I think if somebody's paying X number of dollars a month, eh, each month, they're more likely to use it and be more motivated and become that more motivated customer versus like I'm paying for 3 months. I can wait till next month to take this seriously, I guess. Is that kind of what you're thinking? Like, I think you'll get better users too, who just like, if I'm paying for it this month, I'm gonna use it.
I just don't know. That doesn't, I mean, part of me is like, okay, I'm going to pay for this thing. I'm going to do this for 3 months. I'm going to get great. I'm going to get what I need out of it. And if they want to continue, then they can just keep going. But there is an end date. It feels like it's not a financial like pull. I don't know. Like as a consumer, I think that having that, I don't know, maybe as a consumer, I would prefer to have like my coach on call. You know what I mean? Like just I'm paying
Right.
for access to a coach. And I don't know. I have to think about it some more, but it's good to hear that what you said. So
Well, you
maybe
have a long plane flight coming to think about it.
two.
Not jokingly, you do have that's a great time to think about those things. Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole episode about subscription service psychology and things because I think
Hmm.
I'm in my late 40s, and I think like I said earlier, I'm a little suspicious of subscription things, and I think that people older than us have more natural questions about subscriptions, whereas I
Hmm.
think people who are younger, there's people out there who never had the experience of buying an album or buying, going to rent a DVD. They're just like everything's a subscription. So I think you're talking about there's probably a demographic and age demographic difference there that you would need to look at as well. Because I know
Hmm.
my mom, my mom is like, why am I paying for subscriptions?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just let me buy the thing.
Right?
Right.
Maybe that's aging my demographic or whatever for me. Maybe.
But you have to do that. Now, from a marketing sense, like I started looking at it was about 4 years ago. I was writing to people my age, and then I did a little bit of research and realized the clients I actually want are probably 10 to 12 years older than me. And how do they process this information, or how do they look at
Mm,
these things? Because, you know, I've had a just the bell curve told me that shoot for people who are 60, not 45. So
hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I definitely want to have
marketing's
a.
interesting.
We should definitely have an episode on that. I think that sounds really interesting. The psychology of, spending money as a consumer, for the subscription versus,
Right.
um,
It's a
yeah.
weird model, but I think that's the world's going there. The
What
world
about
is
you?
going
What's
there.
your author update? What's going on in your world?
Writing a lot, getting the words down. I set a goal of 40,000 words this month.
Okay.
I blew past that. Um,
Nice.
I've been buying covers. I've been getting a lot of covers together I'm recovering my reader magnet that I stubbornly held on to for about a year and a half, but just the cover's terrible. And I went from like, this cover's fine. And the moment that I said I didn't like that cover, now the cover's terrible. Like I have this completely like on off
Yep.
switch, and now it's like the worst cover ever. So I've been kind of planning like a relaunching of my author marketing, like relaunching it around having a new cover for the reader magnet. And I
Okay.
want to try new things. I've been reading about, Facebook ads and social media ads to get new readers tend to yield better results. So I've just kind of been getting under the hood of just what I'm doing and whether, what the results are.
Have
Um,
Have you ever taken Mark Dawson's ads for authors
I
course?
have, yep, I did. I'm going to start. I've used some of it.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize when you buy the lifetime product, which
Mm-hmm.
I did, there's a whole bunch of new stuff on there.
Yeah.
Um,
I bought
I'm
his
also,
way back, way, way, way back. I
I think I
bought
bought it in
the
2019.
Self-Publishing 101. It's called
Yeah.
something different now, Launchpad or something like
Yep.
that. And
Yep.
I haven't
Rebranded.
retaken the course since then. So I'm actually excited to go back through it, go do it again, and see how much it's changed. And like all of
Yeah.
my
I mean, I've talked
marketing
about,
basics, came from
right.
that course, really. And so I want to see if I'm still up to par on.
I've talked about like, putting a new series together and wanting to, but I can't do it. I think the current series, I really enjoy it. I love it. I'm going to keep working with it because it's
The
just part of
Strange
me.
Airs series.
Yeah, but I
Uh-huh.
realized that like this was my sort of training wheels, like just marketing thing, like
Mm-hmm.
my training wheels exercise. And I kind of took all of my, life lessons with the series. And, I have months that I sell few books. I have months that I sell a few. Um, and I think it's just time for me to like, before I do anything more, really have a serious, like better skill set and plan to do this.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I've also considered hiring somebody just to do ads and marketing for me in an overall sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that one, I have it on my February to-do list to make that decision by the
Okay.
end of February, like if I'm hiring somebody to do
So,
this or not.
question then, what helps you make that decision?
It's just going to be how much,
Like,
I think the business,
are you going to research different like people that can do it versus
yes, that's number one.
companies? That's number one. Okay, just to see like what they
No,
cost and what they're actually promising you. And
yeah, and then I think so there's three things that I think yeah, it's just going to be cost, what it's going to cost. The versatility of the person has to be there. Like I want them to market both my author, get under the hood and do my author business, and also just do my ghostwriting business. That I have marketing working for me there, but I also, my SEO person has said it wouldn't hurt you to have somebody out there blowing your stuff up on social media and doing all that backlinking stuff. So I want someone who can work with both. Um,
Both
and
ads
then
and social media?
ads and social media with both parts of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm willing to just entertain. I mean, the third thing is the money, right? It gets expensive,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand that immediate ROI is not really likely. Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
probably it'll spend more than it makes the first month, but just I really need to look at if I spend so much money in the first couple of months, how soon will I make it back? How soon will I cross over for that into profitability?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so I'm going to do all that kind of analysis. So
Yeah, that's
we'll
good.
see.
Good to know. I like that. I put that in your author update notes. So if anybody is looking for what did he say about the ads and how do you
And
hire
really
something?
the
So it's
fourth
not in the
thing
show
is
notes, listeners. It's in the author update section.
the real key for me on the person though. It's going to be cost. I mean, I will. That's going to come into it, but I really want someone who's going to be transparent with what they're doing,
Hmm.
so that I can see it. So that if it comes to a point where I say, well, I want to do this myself, I can
Hmm.
look at what they've done and mimic it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't
Yeah. You
know.
want someone that'll be yeah, transparent and educate you a little bit about what they're
Yeah,
doing.
and I know that's dangerous for the provider. That's like, I don't want to teach you out of a job, but I'm also not going to hire you unless you teach me out of your teach. But if they're doing the other side of it, I talking to somebody else. They said if they're doing their work and they're making their money, they'll keep their job as long as you'll have them.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting year.
Hmm.
I'm not going to rest on the laurels here. I'm ready to make waves.
All right. Make waves. That's
Yay.
cool. That's a good t-shirt too. I'm going to put that on our t-shirt
Let's make
list.
the ever expanding t-shirt branding opportunity.
Make waves. Oh, what are you reading?
I started reading Lee Child's Killing Floor. Is it the first of the Jack Reacher books?
Okay.
Um, I was in my mom's bookstore. I've acquired probably 50 books in the last three months. They keep coming. And it's always the most recent one that gets to the top of the stack. It was last week I was in that bookstore and I realized Jack Reacher, how many books are there? 30, 35 Jack Reacher books. And the thing is, I've always heard he's like it's that book is like the ultimate in like character introduction. Like it's
Hmm.
Jack Reacher by the time that book is over is just the character is there for you. Like there's
Hmm.
no and it's like the first
And
30
then does he
pages.
change over the course of the next 30
I
books?
I think he's pretty static. I think that's the story that he's
Yeah.
just kind
That's
of a
the James
wandering.
Bond sort of character.
Yeah, he's the knight errant from the old like King Arthur
Hmm.
stories. Like he's just traveling the world having adventures. And but it's like in the first 30 pages, it's like there's a sense of mystery of this guy and familiarity. It's so
Hmm.
the writing is really great. And the
Oh,
story, like
cool.
yeah, it's not my genre for
Uh-huh.
sure. I don't like that. I don't really love that sort of action stuff so much, but it is so
But as a case study for characterization and
yeah.
starting a series,
Yeah, I'd say within 5 pages, you have unanswered questions that you can't
not
like
know
you
the
can't
answers
yeah
to.
yeah you have to learn like because there's so many because he's so like he's just this like very analytic, very smart, very experienced character, and he alludes to it, and you're like, oh God, okay, what is it? How did you know that? So, what about you? What's
I, as per usual, am reading
oh
a
boy,
couple of books at the same time. So I finished what was the last one well, it doesn't matter. What I'm reading right now is Spill, Summer, Falter, Wither by Sarah Baum. And it's written in second person, but also a
oh
little bit of first,
tricky,
it's
yeah,
really interesting. And the second person is a dog. So so the author, the narrator is a guy that adopts a dog. And so through the whole book, he's saying, oh, when I picked you up from the shelter, and you did this and you did that. So he's talking to the dog through the whole book, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't sound like I was saying it right, but I'm glad you understand what I'm trying to
Yeah, I know where
say.
you're going.
And I've read a book by her before, and I wanted to try her out again. I like um, her poet. I don't want to say poetry because it's not like she's using flowery language, but
Right.
the way she writes makes everything so not immediate. You are there, like environmentally, like you're in the story in a sensory sort of way. So I can't remember the other book that I read by her, but it was about this couple with a couple of dogs that move into this house. And so the whole book is, I mean, just you can smell the peat moss. You can, like everything is right there as you're turning the pages reading. So I like that about her. And the last book I read by her wasn't very plot driven. I mean, there
Hmm.
wasn't a very clear, like, this is what the character wants, and by the end of the book they get it or they don't, that kind of arc that was
Right.
a little missing for me. So I want to see if that happens in this book too. But I'm
Right.
enjoying the reading, but I'm about, I don't know, 5 chapters in, and I'm like, okay, I'm wondering if there's going to be like what's the initial conflict of this book? Was
Right.
it is it going to just be a story about him adopting this dog and learning how to live with it, or is there some external story too? I don't know yet. So
Right.
that's happening. And then for the plane,
Nah, knew
um,
this was coming.
I've got a couple, actually for the plane, I've got a couple of nonfiction books. I brought The Creative Act by
Oh
Rick
yeah.
Rubin. And also, I'm reading this finance book. It's actually not really a finance book. It's called Redefine Wealth for Yourself, How to Stop Chasing Money and Finally Live Your Life's Purpose.
All right.
So that I'm actually starting to read, and that's probably what I'll read mostly on the plane to begin with. It's by Patrice Washington, and I listened to her podcast, Redefining Wealth, and I really like it. She's very faith-based. So she has a lot of faith language. And I am in a part of my life where I can hear that and just immediately translate it to my worldview,
Right.
and not get stopped by, any kind of God language. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
There was
Yep.
a,
Yep.
25 years ago, that would not have been the case. I would have been like completely turned off by anybody saying the word God.
Right.
But that was just PTSD from my cultish upbringing.
Yeah.
And now, I'm totally over that and have my own spiritual worldview and like it, and it resonates with me. So I can immediately translate anything like that comes to me. So that's all to say. I'm really enjoying her podcast, so that's why I bought her book.
Interesting. Yeah, I understand what you're talking about being sort of roadblocked by overly faith-based messaging that can be really, I don't know. I get very suspicious at that point. But I've learned that, people come at wisdom from every possible
And it's really all just
angle.
vocabulary,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when I'm able to take the God word out of there, actually what she's saying is exactly what I do. Like
Right. Right.
I have faith in my intuition,
Right. Right.
and like channeling that inner wisdom, or like the universal divine or whatever. I
Right.
don't believe in a God figure, but yeah, so whenever I hear her talking about being called to something or getting, like the spiritual download, like, dude, I get that too. That's just from me though,
Yeah.
having that
Yeah.
quiet time. And so that's how I translate it.
No, that's great.
All right. Well, let's talk about libraries, dude.
I love the library.
Yeah.
I really love it. I
I
have I have a love affair with libraries.
I grew up loving libraries. I remember my mom taking me and my two sisters to the library, and the children's section was it was a great library. Like I really loved the
Right.
Albany, Oregon Public Library back in the day. It's
Hats off.
different, you know.
Everybody should just leave in the comments what their hometown library was, because I think it's
Nice.
like Oregon City Public Library. I'll be there today.
You'll be there
It's
to
my
see.
childhood library.
So I have lost touch with my public library, and part of that is because of
Currently, your current public, you don't go to Springfield Public Library.
it's rare. But part of that is because I work in a bookstore and I get discounts. And I'm just
Oh,
like, ooh,
right.
book, ooh, book. But I have told myself, and I was very successful for about 6 to 8 months, and I haven't done it recently. So here's what I do. I get ebooks from the public library,
There you go.
and they go directly to my Kobo e-reader, and I can search on my e-reader for stuff, and often it's, unavailable or they don't have it or something like that, but it's a you just tell them to get it,
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
they'll contact you when it's ready. So then the only thing is I can only have 10 holds. Basically, that's what it is. Even if they don't have the book yet, it's still considered a hold in the system. So I can only have, I think, 10 holds. And so what I do is go through my wish list and like look for all these books and put holds on them. So as they come in, I get an email saying, oh, you've got 3 days to pick up this book. And then I just like it jumps the stack, you know what I mean? And
Yep.
so that's what I like to do, because then it's sort of on a, I don't know, it's sort of an autopilot thing. I can set it and forget it, but I've run out of books and then I didn't go back to it. So that's what I need to keep doing is I have a list of I have a book wish list. Every time a book title comes up that I want to, read, I put it on this list. If I'm not going to buy it right away because I need it right away, then yeah. So I just need to do
Right.
that again. I just haven't I haven't remembered to go back and search for it, but I want to become the sort of person that defaults to the library because, why not? It supports
Yeah.
authors, it supports the community, it supports, yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of why I wanted to talk about this is that I felt like there's a lot of obvious things about the library that I think anybody could tell you. I mean, it's the basic function is to check out books, but I think there's a lot of things that as an author, as you're trying to make your way, um, you're trying to make your way, and I particularly trying to make your way on a budget. I think there's things that the library offers that you really can't get many other places.
As an
Um,
author or as a consumer, like a reader?
I think as an author or a reader, I mean, you think you could take it either way. I mean, I was just thinking of specifically like there's so many ways in which my public library, I mean, saves me a lot of money and
Mm-hmm.
they offer a lot of, the library is one of only a couple of places in our culture where you can go without the expectation of spending money. I mean, if you really think
Mm-hmm.
about it, everywhere else you go, coffee shop, restaurant, anywhere, you either have to have like a membership or subscription, you have to be a student at the school
Mm-hmm.
to use their facilities, or you have to pay money to sit down and use the facilities, to use the Wi-Fi at the cafe. You can't just go in there and say, "Hey, I'm just going to take up space while you just can't."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it may seem like a trifling matter to say that, $7 for a cup of coffee or something is like, a barrier, but I just feel like the library offers so many things without the need to spend money that you can use as a writer, um and just I think it's overlooked. I think there's so many, and I also noticed this just because I there's so many spaces to sit in my library, and
Mm.
there's very rarely anybody there. Not very rarely. There's more often there are people at the Oregon City Library than in other libraries I've frequented recently. But it's just I look at it like there's a lot more resources than people would know if you haven't been frequenting your library. So there's more than just the books. I mean, for me, it's like a place to work away from home. I'm in this office, sometimes 8 hours a day, sometimes more, going on 1, 2, 3 days a week. I need a break. And so,
Some different
y-
environment.
yeah, going to a library it's quiet-ish. Sometimes it can get kind of loud, but like if you don't if you don't have a dedicated workspace to get your work done as a creative, it's worth looking into your public library as a place to go sit down for a couple of hours. You can sit at the library for a couple of hours and nobody is gonna look at you funny.
Mm-hmm.
They're not
Yeah.
going to ask to refill your water. They're not going to wonder what you're doing. That's invalid. Where else can you do that?
Yeah. Unaccosted space.
Right. And I just think people overlook that. When I hear writers talk about or people who are getting started, they ask like, well, I don't have an office and my kids are there and they're making noise, or my husband, like the time that I'm home is also this. Well, the library is open from 10 to 8 and, a couple of days a week in most places. Like, why don't go work there? That's creates the space for you.
Also, I have taken when my children were small, I would take them to the library. And, the children's section of my public library is its own kind of like wing. It's like a big room, but
Right.
it's the only thing that's off of. And there's a table, a round table that's pretty close to that entrance. So I would like stake myself there with my laptop, and then I'd be
Right.
able to see if they weren't allowed to leave and they knew where I was and they could just go look at books. And of course, one of my kids was a little handful, so I couldn't often do that. It had to be
Right.
a special circumstance when he was ready to just look at books and be quiet, but he wasn't one of the quiet ones in the library usually.
Right.
But if you
I
have the kind of kids that can just go and do their thing quietly, then you
well,
can
and
write
another
in the
thing,
children's section.
right. But there's another thing, and I was, kind of wrote this down. Like a library is a hub for education. Okay. So
Hmm.
especially if you have a small town library, it's like it is sometimes the hub for sort of adult education, but it's also a hub for kid education. So one of the things I did when Elijah got to be, I mean, there was the time when he was in things like Book Babies where you were expected to sit with him, and that was a
Hmm.
blast. And I'm grateful for the library for that. But there's also now I can take him to something called like Lego Lab, or any one of the things that will occupy him for an hour, and I can go have an hour while he's
Hmm.
doing his thing with his peers in a room supervised,
Hmm.
um, and I can go do my thing. The other side of that hub for education element of your library is that my local library has a writers' night. It's every Tuesday night from 5 to 7. They bring writers in, people. It's kind of like a big open informal writers group
Hmm.
where, like, again, it doesn't cost anything. They often have local, sort of professional writers come in and offer, little talks. Or I met Vinny Kinsella, who's a big Portland publication consultant, through one of their programs. So I think that beyond the stacks, there's a lot of opportunities to educate yourself or create the time that you need to give this whole thing a whirl.
And also, if you're trying to build an audience, they're always open to hearing about free programming. So if you have a talk
Oh
that you
yeah.
want to
Yeah.
give
Right.
about, or like a slideshow of, the time you went backpacking in the Himalayas and you wrote a memoir about it and you've got a slideshow presentation and you're going to do a Q&A, and or like usually it's it's got to be more interesting than just like home movies. But like if there's a thematic topic that you can speak about or have a Q&A about that also, was brought up in your memoir or something, then or novel. Like I read that book, oh my gosh, now Piano Tide by
Hmm.
Kathleen. Ah, I just blanked on her name, but
We'll
it's
get the research department on it.
another thing cool about the library. We'll have to mention that too. Um, the
Yeah, I think if you're a nonfiction author, it's a natural to like go to offer something, offer an hour. Yeah, that's a great idea. I didn't
or
even think of
even
that.
like she is a nonfiction author, but this Piano Tide was actually a novel. So, but it still had those same topics, themes about environmentalism and um, yeah, what happens to a small town when you bring in big stuff, big corporations, and how that changes people's, relationships with each other. And so yeah, there's a lot of themes. So even if you're a fiction author, you can still have themes that you write about. I also, I did a reading one time with a woman who was a psychologist and she wrote fiction, but all of her characters had some mental, I don't um, neurodivergence, let's just say that.
Right,
So
right.
she was able to talk, she could talk about that in a, she could spin it to an audience that was interested in finding more out about those certain um, divergences, I guess you could say.
Right.
So anything, yeah, free talks. If you're doing author services, as we do, we can talk about um, our services or teach other writers about things. Our local library, same, also has a monthly, it's like a talk, a writer's talk.
Right.
And usually there's the word crafters organization usually does that. Or NaNoWriMo, they have write-ins, sometimes there. Um, what else? Free talks, hub for education. I like that you called it a hub
I
for education.
One of the things I use the library, I'm always using the library for, it's research. And now that's like pretty obvious, right? You can go in there if your topic is, I don't know, like whatever your topic is, you can find books on the topic. If your topic is anything locally sourced, I think that most libraries have a lot of local, like the Oregon City Library is like a historical treasure. They've got all this Oregon Trail, actually a whole room or
Hmm.
a whole wing, like a whole side of the room that's dedicated to just some of the original printed material from the Oregon Territory. It's really fascinating. But the other thing, research wise, that I think people overlook is like if you're going to publish books or want to get into publishing books, you have to know what they look like and what they feel like.
Hmm.
If you want to know like author photos, like how to do an author photo, you can go into the library and just open 10 books and look at the author photos and get an idea of what you like, right? I use it a lot for blurbs, just like what does the
Hmm.
back of a book like Jack Reacher look like, or what does the
Hmm.
back of a book like the Monk and Robot series? They're all very different. And so again, you can do this at a bookstore and that's fine. But I
But the
think a lot of
expectation then is that you buy something when you go
right.
in.
Yeah, and pawing over the books isn't, and also you can check them out and you can look at them and say, okay, this book is in my genre and I can, or not in my genre. I'm going to read the first chapter of 10 different books and see what the authors do. I think that research that I think sometimes, I don't know, this is maybe a me thing or a we thing, I don't know, but I think there's this like you get really into your head about what you're doing and you're doing it, but you forget that you're doing it as a part of the like a world, like there's an author world. And so I think going to the library and being able to pick up all these books and look at it and say, I want my science fiction book to look like this one, not this one. I want my author photo to look like that one. It's just such a a pressure-free place to learn about authoring.
So I have a question for you, but I can't remember the word
Uh-oh.
that I need to use. So I'm going to describe it to you. As writers, I feel really horrible when I can't think of a word, but I'm almost 50. Maybe that's just part of the
Yeah, it
course.
happens.
So, it's not internship. That's not the word I'm looking for. And it's not like a resident. Well, maybe it is resident. The resident writer, kind of, the resident author, the resident artist. Didn't you at one point have some sort of local public
Well,
library
yeah,
residency or something like that?
the Multnomah Library. This is something if you're in the Multnomah Library area, which I still am, and I still have my Multnomah County Library card.
You have
But
two different library cards?
oh my gosh, I have three. I have a Washington County Library card too.
What?
That one sits in a shameful box on its own, though. I don't let that one come out because Washington County's weird. Um, yeah, so there's the Sterling Writers Room that in the downtown branch of the Multnomah County Library, there's a room in the third floor. It's a beautiful room. It's all old wood and it's got these big windows very high in the building. You can't look out the windows, but they're very high, so
Mm-hmm.
you get that sort of like light. Um, and the only people that can be in there are approved members of the Sterling Writers group. And actually, I put it on my resume because it like
Mm.
I mean, I didn't have to
Clout.
do much. I didn't have to do much to get that, but a few people have asked, and it because it looks very prestigious. But it is cool. If I'm ever downtown, which I was a lot more in previous iterations of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed 2 hours to do some work, like yeah, I would just go to the library. Give them my name. They'd open up the door. Beautiful, quiet room, private bathroom, nobody bothering you, which can be a downside to the library because it is a community place. It's where people, who are houseless will, go to charge their phones or they go to
Mm-hmm. Use
just
the internet. Yeah.
be in out of the rain.
Mm-hmm.
So there can be a bit of disruption there, but yeah,
But
if
not
there are
not in that top
opportunities,
floor in the Multnomah Sterling
not
room.
around all that beautifully varnished wood and brass. It's
So
really,
did you have to apply for that?
yeah, you had to fill out an application and you had to give them like a writing sample. And I've probably used it in the 10 years that I've been a Sterling writer. I've probably used it, I don't know, 40 times, 50 times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I used it in a pinch. There was a time, a while back when I had a job downtown that I would then just sort of shift over to the Sterling room to do other work. So I think a lot of libraries have those programs and opportunities that they don't they're just not widely known. I think there's probably a lot of writers in Portland that don't even know about the Sterling program and wouldn't even think. And I was not joking when I said like it's something you can put on a resume if you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
build a service or build some credibility. Once you're a member of something, however hard it was to get in it, you're a member and people appreciate who
That's
you.
not a regular thing in public libraries though.
I don't think so, but I think there's a lot more of those kind of things, then it can't hurt to ask, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Yeah.
I think that you can't if you finding out what kind of programs they offer creatives or what kind of things. Like I don't know, this is off the writer topic, but just, the Oregon City Library offers cultural passes. So you can go in there and check out 2 tickets to OMSI, which is, might cost you $50 if you were going to pay for it. But our library has a library of things. You can check out board games. You can check out an iron, you know.
Yeah.
So
There's
it's
also places
it's
like the
amazing.
makers studios and stuff like that where you could
Oh
go
yeah,
in and like borrow like a printing press or something, or not borrow
right.
it, but like use it, have a
Yeah,
space where you can go in and use a sewing machine or whatever. It's kind of
yeah.
a maker's. I don't think you can check out tools,
Well, there's
but
the tool libraries, and I know that Portland had neighborhood tool libraries where if you needed I don't know, whatever your job is, you need a jackhammer, they've got one. Um, anything that's got the word library attached to it, I'm immediately like, what's there? Let's go figure
Yeah.
that out.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. That's
the
cool.
other thing that I like, and this is part of the why I like to write in public, is that there's just people watching. There's people
Mm-hmm.
around. And I think people still regard the library with manners,
Mm-hmm.
thankfully. Um, and so I think you can kind of safely people watch in there. For me, it's really helpful if I'm stuck, or if I'm trying to keep a flow up of, a creative flow up. It's nice to be able to look up and see, you know, somebody browsing these books, or somebody, at the door. Like, I don't know. I think people watching for me is good fuel. And again, it's a safe place to people watch, because you don't have, nobody's, I think people are just less guarded in the library than they are in a
Mm.
restaurant or in a cafe, or
Mm-hmm.
there's less judgment in the library.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that people watching is like, you can sit around and watch people are reading, so it's kind of nice to be around people who are doing the thing that you're doing, doing a part of the thing you're doing with, around you. Like, I like going in there and seeing that the people at the reading tables are, okay, that person's reading that book. And um, I think it's very informative and very helpful.
And just being around other books that you're trying to write, being surrounded by books. It makes you
Yeah,
part of the establishment, like part of the industry.
right, right. I think when painters go want to paint something, they go to that space. They go, like, if you're going to paint, well, I mean, water lilies, the first thing that comes to mind when I think about painting. Well, I mean, there had to be time spent with water lilies at that time,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I think, while that's not exactly one, like apples to apples comparison, I think it is really nice to be like, if you're trying to write, you're trying to come up with story. It's inspiring to watch people, like, all right, these people are all reading stories. Like, there are people out there doing this, and I'm doing this for them
So yeah, maybe check
sometimes.
out your local library and see what there is in terms of creative programming there, but also do they have a writer residency, like a writer in residence sort of thing? I went to my library a while ago to see if I could like, you know, be there. Like I asked what kind of programs
Be
they
there.
were looking. What I mean is like if I showed up Thursdays from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. and just was there as the editor in residence or, writer in residence. So like if anybody wanted like shop hours or office hours, like if anybody had a
Right.
like ask an author anything kind of thing, or like here's my query letter. Can you look at my query letter and see if it's okay? Like just be there for anybody that need as a resource, because that would be something that the library could then promote, and it would be a service to the community. And also, um, you can get practice, if you're a new editor and you want to start offering that as a service or ghostwriter or something like that, then you can practice your craft right there on real people for free, and then maybe start establishing like a client will show up out of that. Maybe, I don't know.
Right. Right. That's a great idea. I never even thought of that. Um,
I I asked what kind of programs, uh, like what they needed in terms of programming, and my particular library said, actually, what we really need, like they don't have nights. This library closed like at 8 or 7 or something like that. So there wasn't like a lot of nighttime, programs or something, but it was how do we get people? They want people to be there during the day, because they would get them
right.
there on the weekends and, in the evenings and maybe even the mornings for like morning programs for the kids. The parents would bring their kids in or whatever. But how do they keep people in the library from like 10 to 4, like where,
Yeah.
or after school, I guess was fine, but like that 10 to 2 space, and who would come. So then you have to start playing that game. Like that whole target audience sort of question, like who would be showing up at that time? what do I have that demographic would need, and sort of reverse engineering what you could bring to the library and what you could pitch. But yeah, just making
Well,
relationships there too.
right. But I think something you're talking about is like a whole other topic that's super valuable. And that's the how do you figure out, like we were talking about with marketing earlier, like how do you how do you know you what people need? You have to ask. And I think there's a lot of like you can learn a lot of I don't know. I had this experience with a writers conference I'll be at in April where I just asked them if they needed anything and she didn't respond. The woman didn't respond right away, the programmer, but then she came back and said, "Well, you know what? We really need this. Can you be there for that?" Like people that's how you build relationships. Like just if you don't know what to do, just ask where someone needs help and it's probably going to open a door for you.
Hmm.
A big door, probably.
Cool. Any other cool bits about libraries that you love? Or
I mean, I love it all. So I mean, I could go on and on forever, but you got to get on a plane.
I do. The other thing I like about libraries is that they do those interlibrary loans.
Oh God,
So if
yeah.
you can't get a book, they don't have it, they can get it for you.
Yeah.
I mean, within reason, and like there's certain I guess, I don't know, regions or whatever that don't cross over. Like they can get it
Right.
from these libraries, but not from this one or something like that. I don't know how
It's
those
like a
work.
political thing. Like, you know, they have it. And you can also, if you have a favorite book that, you know, a favorite indie book, something that you love that they don't have at the library, you can request that they a copy for the stacks. I do this on an almost monthly basis. A Woman's Guide to Search and Rescue from
Oh
Mary
yeah.
Carroll Moore. Like
Uh-huh.
I've gotten that one for our local library. Um,
Nice.
and actually recommended it to the woman that runs the I see at the fiction table often. There's a new author called Sarah Pinkser that I'm super into, and I've requested all of her books. So those sort of like again, that's sort of like relationship building. You know, you're helping your favorite authors or publishers create a relationship with. This is how people find books. So if you want your favorite authors to be found, there's a way to do it.
Yeah, that's that literary citizenship that we like to talk
Literary
about too.
citizenship.
Nice. Ask them to get local authors in,
Yep.
local
Yep.
authors' books in. Cool.
I'm
All
sure that
right.
your local author will love that
Yes.
request from the library. Like, oh, do you how many copies would you like? I can sign every one of them.
Nice. And then you can maybe ask them to do the same thing. I
Right.
mean, that could just be
Right.
part of your like your sign off. If you don't have this book and you know, want to, you can get it free at your local library, just request it. That's what you can
Right.
say, really,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because they require based on like community demand.
Yeah. Yeah. If somebody asks for it, they're gonna go get it. They haven't anyone that I've asked for, they've gotten. There's been no, yeah,
Cool.
it's
Well,
pretty
thanks
great.
for talking about libraries with me. This has inspired me to like check out my own library more often and re put that hold list back up, you know.
Right.
Populate my hold list again so I can get my e-readers filled. All right.
Yeah.
I do that because I'm lazy. That way I don't need to like go and pick it up, and it's
Right.
just right there and it's kind of delivered to me. I mean, it is.
Right. And don't let the fines get in your way, folks. I mean, if you've got some fines,
Our
you know,
library
I
doesn't
do
do
the,
fines.
oh, really?
Yeah, there's no fines. They still
Oregon
have
City
a
Library does fines, and my 9-year-old like hates it. You know, he's just like, "What? 10 cents a day? I'm not giving them a quarter." I'm like, "Well, your math is off because it was only 2 days, and that's a quarter's 25 cents, not 20." But how do you think they pay for all those beautiful things? Sometimes they
Yeah.
have to, yeah. Pay those library fines
Yeah.
with pride because that goes back into the system that you're feeding from. I know I said there's no expectation of money in a library, but if $5, I owe my library $5 at this point. I think $5 for what I've gotten in the last 5 months is, I mean, the biggest bargain ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Well,
And the
travel
only
safe.
reason they ask
Oh,
you to pay the fine is because you went back on your word and didn't return it when you said you
you
would,
went you went
right?
back on your word. I like that.
All right, I do need to get ready. I need to go
Yeah,
mop
travel
the
safe.
floors before I leave.
Oh my gosh, you're
You know, when
a
you leave
different
on
bird.
vacation, or I mean, this isn't really vacation, but when you leave the house for an extended period of time, you take out the trash and the compost and you change the sheets and clean out the refrigerator and mop the floor. So when you walk back in, you know, there's not all that stuff waiting for you. So
I agree. I to an extent I do that. I don't clean out the refrigerator. I tend to do that when I get home, which is a far grosser. But yeah. Well, like I said, travel safe.
thank you.
All right.
And we'll see you. Yeah, come back, listener, and see which one of us does our solo episode while I'm gone. All right. Bye for now.
Bye for now.